Welcome to Universal Joint Podcast. I'm entertainer writer Jim Hill, and my co-host Dustin Fuhs and I are recording this podcast on Saturday, July 4th, 2020. Folks, it's been about 6 weeks since our last show, and I want to be clear here, that is my fault, not Dustin's. To be honest, this COVID-19 situation took a hard left back in early June. Remember when we were supposedly flattening the curve? Well, given the recent spike in coronavirus cases here in the States, it looks like we're the ones who are getting flattened. Please tell me it's going better up in Canada, Dustin.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat. We're taking things day by day, just making sure that we're limiting the exposure to the virus through things like social distancing and mobile ordering food. Toronto just opened up our outdoor patios, which is great. It allows us to enjoy the weather. But we're in the summer. So with summer comes temperatures for us in the 90s, mid-90s. And it's just interesting to see what the suntans that we'll be getting from these masks and face coverings. Yeah, but
God, I had not even thought of that.
But wow. If we're talking about actual numbers, Ontario reported the lowest number of COVID-19 cases in days with only 121 new infections.
See, now that's wonderful to hear, especially on the heels of what's going on in California. Again, the U.S.'s most populous state, and also the home of Universal Pictures, Universal Studios Hollywood theme park, as well as the original City Walk retail, dining, and entertainment district. And the interesting thing, California was the first state here in the U.S. to issue a stay-at-home order back on March 19th, which initially seemed to be flattening the curve in California, and which is why, much the same as what was going on in Toronto, opening up outside dining, that sort of thing, Governor Gavin Newsom begins allowing that state's 58 counties to begin reopening in mid-May, which is when the Disneyland Resort and Universal Studios Hollywood start talking about reopening. We saw the City Walk portion of Universal Hollywood partially reopen starting on June 10th. And Anaheim's Downtown Disney was supposed to open on July 9th, with Disneyland Park and Disneyland's California Adventure opening on July 17th. But then in mid-June, California begins experiencing a resurgence of the coronavirus, largely because individual counties had rushed to reopen for business. And as a direct result, California Governor Gavin Newsom ordered a statewide mask requirement on June 18th. He also made the state's theme parks aware that the state of California would now not be issuing its theme park reopening guidelines until sometime after July 4th. Which is then the dominoes started to fall. So I don't know if you saw the announcement on June 24th about how Disneyland announced it would be postponing the reopening of its theme parks, the two Anaheim parks, indefinitely, which then led to Universal Studios Hollywood, along with Knott's Berry Farm, Six Flags Magic Mountain, SeaWorld San Diego, and Legoland, all pushing back their openings, and they were supposed to open on July 1st. What is it, Wednesday this week? So where does this leave California's theme park fans? Obviously in something of a holding pattern. And in fact, Newsom's doing everything he can to control the resurgence of coronavirus over the 4th of July weekend. I don't know if you saw that he ordered the closure of all the parking lots at the state-run beaches in Southern California and the Bay Area. Sure. Likewise, he ordered all indoor non-essential businesses to close in 19 of California's counties. That's 75% of the state's population. And I have to tell you, given that my daughter Alice lives out in the Long Beach area, the fact that they've now had to go back to basically a lockdown that's in place for another 3 weeks, she is not a happy camper.
Well, it's so difficult because they saw the green light. They had that mentality of, we've beaten this. We can reopen. The economy is back. Everything is back. And the issue that we've seen up here is that as soon as you have that mentality, you're going to see a spike because it only takes one situation, one thing where you have a large amount of people combined together. There's so much that we don't know about COVID-19, information that's coming out day after day of, how this thing is being transmitted and lessons that are being learned. And I think that's something that the Southern California theme parks are really taking note of, because for them, it's not just, hey, come in and ride our rides. It's not, no, we're here because we're part of the community. And you want to make sure that you're keeping your community safe. And if that means not opening until past July, maybe into August, we'll see.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned that, because Legoland California, and as you were just mentioning, they cited the constantly changing coronavirus situation. This past Wednesday, they announced that San Diego area theme park couldn't possibly reopen to at least August 1st, which is now 4 weeks away. Mm-hmm. And now what's kind of interesting is that Universal Studios Hollywood will most likely follow Legoland's lead and not reopen to at least Saturday, August 1st. But on the other hand, Universal Pictures, the physical motion picture and production facility, which is located in the lower lot of Universal Studios Hollywood, that incrementally began opening for business back on June 15th. Now, just to be clear here, we're not talking about every single Universal Pictures employee coming back to work. We're talking about a handful of team members, each of which has been drilled about the studio's new safety-first approach to film and television production work. And you've been around, again, that's the joy of living in Toronto. You get to see a lot of film and television production. In fact, looking out your window, right?
Actually, they were directly out our window is the Distillery District, the historic Distillery District where they filmed Tommy Boy. So I look at film crews like constantly. They were doing like Toronto was where they filmed the blockbuster of Pixels and Suicide Squad.
Hey.
I know. But yeah,
I actually, somewhere in Pixels, there's a good movie. I just don't think they found it, but somewhere in there,
You know what? It was fun to see them film it, but you're completely right. When you're in a film location where there's an industry, it's a multi-million-dollar industry, this is where you want to be. So absolutely, it's interesting seeing how they would make it so it's safe. But from what we can tell, they've gone above and beyond.
Yeah, it's an interesting time because again, everybody face it. Film production, television production, usually a lot of long hours and a lot of people working in close company, and that's kind of gone on out the window. And so we're talking about a very, very different work environment going forward here with, lots and lots of social distancing, not to mention mandatory face masks. In fact, somebody was telling me about, face it, you've walked by enough film sets there in Toronto. You've seen a craft services table where everybody goes to grab a snack in between shots and that sort of thing. That's gone, Dustin. In its place now is an app where, literally you're on the set and it's like, I would like a bagel and coffee. And you pull out the app and you hit, bagel and coffee. And then somebody from craft services who's wearing a mask and wearing gloves and brings you your food and, as low touch as possible in a brown paper bag or, a little styrofoam thing, delivers it to you.
Yeah.
Which, again, for all those folks who sneak snacks on a film set, life just got difficult. And by the way, it's not just, in Toronto or for that matter, the 400-acre Universal production facility out in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. They've just started up production again on Jurassic World Dominion, which, weren't you telling me they were doing a good chunk of filming of that in Canada?
Yeah, we actually talked about it on one of our Universal Joint podcasts from, I think it was in the summer of last year. We were talking about how they were basically going around the world to find the right backdrop for this. And yeah, they did a lot of it in the southern point of British Columbia, actually about an hour away from where they did some filming for the Power Rangers reboot movie.
Oh, very cool. That's I remember when it was Tron that was shot. What was it? British Columbia, wasn't it? Or excuse me, Tron Legacy. My mistake. Anyway, to get back to Jurassic World Dominion, Chris Pratt just this week tweeted out that they left off filming or suspended filming back on March 14th, but they're now back in the UK, beginning production again. But again, it took a while to get there. I mean, first the cast and crew had to fly in 2 weeks ahead of the beginning of production and self-isolate. They had the quarantine. And they then began shooting, but as part of the deal, they have to be available for constant COVID-19 testing. And if they come up positive, they then have to, once again, self-isolate for 2 weeks until they come up clean, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's too negative. So they're on the same mentality, and most of our listeners are also paying attention to the news that's out there. And one of the big things that's going on is the NBA's reintroduction in the bubble in Disney World. Same type of thing. They have to fly in. First off, flying into a location is very difficult right now because there's not a lot of flights. And then on top of that, you have to think about the idea of not just self-quarantining for the 2 weeks, but being away from family and friends and everything like that. You're basically in a different location for that time period. And if you do get a positive test, that impacts not just you, but your entire production. And then you have to figure out, that 2 negative tests, which have to come back 24 hours of each other. So there's a lot that goes into our current situation. And if they're starting up, they must have an ironclad situation where all of the cast are safe, the crew is safe, and they're able to do work on a whole different level.
Well, here's hoping. So, the more interesting thing for me is that, earlier on, I think we've talked about how Sam Neill was supposed to be part of Jurassic World Dominion. But what's interesting is I thought myself, given what happened with Jeff Goldblum's Ian Malcolm character back in Fallen Kingdom, it's like, okay, so he's in the movie. Like, he's in the movie literally for 2 minutes. So it's like, oh, all right, so Alan Grant's back, and Ali Sadler and Ian Malcolm are back. So it's great, another bunch of 2-minute long cameos. And it's like Sam Neill's like, no. He says, we are all the way through this film, Jeff, me, and Laura. So it's like, so what is the deal? That the Chris Pratt, Owen Grady character and the Bryce Howard, Claire Dearing character, they turned to Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm and Ellie for help in rounding up these dinosaurs that are now loose in North America?
I would love to have the original cast, so Sam, Jeff, and Laura, be the employees of InGen, and then have like the different groups coming together, and that's my dream, where you have the different personalities from different, movies coming together and just taking this thing to the whole new level. Because that's, as soon as they said they're in it the entire way through, I'm like, how do they do that? Story-wise, you have to give them something to do. Maybe that's, what we could see is a return of InGen.
Well, I guess we will all know come June 11th, 2021. That's, of course, if we're finally being allowed to head back into theaters at that point. Yeah. But on the other hand, if you just can't wait to get some Jurassic World-related fun, I guess you could now head to Universal's Islands Adventure, where the raptor encounter has now relocated to the other side of the street. So it's now in a piece of the old extended queue for the Jurassic River Ride Adventure. Yeah. That opened on June 4th. Have you seen any of the video and such for that?
Yeah, it looks amazing. What I find hilarious is the fact that social distancing has made that experience actually better, it looks like. You have the more interactive experience with the team member who's there and really taking things to that next stage of interaction. I've always said that the raptor encounter is one of my favorite character experiences, and it's not the raptor, it's that team member. That team member has to be almost on a comedic level so far ahead of us, because you never know who is going to be interacting with the raptor. But Blue is still one of my favorite characters of Jurassic World. But you were saying that Blue isn't the only one that we get to meet.
Yeah. Well, evidently now, when the performer who's in the blue suit has to go on break, what they do now to sort of sort of slide over that moment in the show. They have a Universal team member come on stage with a pretty amazing hand puppet of Sierra, who is supposed to be a 6-month-old velociraptor. And, Aww. And the weird thing is you go from dealing with this giant puppet that's protected, by foliage, so you don't see the lower half of the human performer, to suddenly, you're as up close and personal as you can get in our age of social distancing. But this is a pretty cool prop.
From what I can tell, it looks like they've updated that the old Triceratops, when you would go right in front of the Triceratops encounter back in the day, you would walk and there would be a team member outside just holding a baby Triceratops. And it looks like they're able to bring that into the next generation with the technology that they have for up-close audio animatronics. This thing is amazing and it's so cute.
Now, there's been a lot made within the Universal fan community about the fact that when you go to this new version of the paddock for the Raptor encounter, that, for example, the color palette, is blue, which of course is the color palette for Jurassic World. And I want to say, is it signage or the actual team members that mentioned Jurassic World at this point?
And I think it's the signage, because it's definitely the blue and the gray color palette, which is why for the longest time we've always thought that next ball was going to drop, that it was going to be Jurassic World coming from the West Coast over to the East Coast, but then they decided to create the new little roller coaster out front, which I don't think have you seen anything? Have they started construction on it? I haven't seen anything about that little ride that they're building. Give it time.
That's our buddy Bio Reconstruct would disagree with that point.
He would.
In fact, I think, what was it, starting in June, we finally got to see track work.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm still waiting to see, when this thing is finally set up entirely in front of the old Jurassic Park Discovery Center in there on the waterfront. Face it, we're seeing some rock work done at this point. Supposedly there's going to be a waterfall element. And
yep.
I want to see this once the planting is in place. Because frankly, you've probably seen the exact same things I've seen. The folks who are complaining about how, I guess you could look out a particular window at the Wizarding World Hogsmeade and, the track is like right there.
All of that construction is not just like right in sight. You can actually like almost reach out and touch it. That's how close it is. And my worry, I'm assuming just like everybody else, is will that hurt the theming within the restaurants, within Hogsmeade, within all of these other areas of Islands of Adventure, which has always been incredibly well themed.
I totally get this. I really do. And I applaud the passion of theme park fans, but at the same time, it's like, no, wait a minute. You walk into the Magic Kingdom and you stand there on turn of the century America, and at the end of the street, there's a 180-foot tall castle. But that's okay with you, just sort of like, but the roller coaster that you can see out the side of the restaurant, is offensive. But at the same time, the flying hippogriff is charming. It's just sort of like, all right, I guess for me, it's one of these things where it's like, pick your battles, all right? Is that really what's going to upset you? Because I got a giant green Hulk-shaped thing that screams at me every time I walk over to, Marvel Superhero Island, and it's and that doesn't bug me. But
yeah, well, did they have Wi-Fi in Adventureland and the things that we talk about as theme park fans? It takes things to a next level. But when they were talking about how big this coaster is and how much of an impact it's going to be on the skyline of Islands of Adventure, that's where my theme park brain goes, where it's like, where are they going to put all this foliage? How are they going to replant Jurassic Park and Jurassic World? I'm just so excited to see how they're going to repopulate this island with foliage.
I'm it's one of these moments. I'm embarrassed because I'm blanking the name of the wonderful member of the Universal creative team who used to be a former Imagineer guy, worked in The Simpsons. I'm having a brain fart. But anyway, I remember standing with this guy. He was the gentleman who was in charge of Skull Island, Reign of Kong. And we were standing in front of the attraction, and it was one of these things where we looked up just as the pterodon flyers, whatever those are. And the thing is, you can stand in front of Kong and see that circling nearby. He's like, look, theming. It's like, I deliberately designed this entrance so you could see dinosaurs, and there were dinosaurs on this island. Aren't I clever? So it's like sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it doesn't. So it's just sort of like, all right, so luck of the draw, in order to get this new coaster in place, which will energize Jurassic World, possibly Jurassic Park, we don't know. This is what's going to happen. And it just sort of, for me, I want to wait till the theming's in place. I want to wait till the horticulture gets in there and plants everything up, and then we give it a year or so to grow. At that point, if I can see it, then I'll complain. At this point, to be honest, I have other things to be concerned about. Like, for example, the layoff that happened at the Universal Orlando Resorts just 2 weeks after they reopened. And again, we've been talking constantly during the show, folks, about coronavirus, COVID-19. But this is one of the prices we're paying right now. That remember, that the Universal Parks are owned by NBC Universal, which in turn is owned by Comcast, and according to Kurt Vonnegut, everything Comcast is then owned by the Ramjack Corporation, right? Which owns everything. But anyway, that they, after looking at the books for 2 weeks, with the new social distancing in place and the limited capacity of the parks, it's like, ooh, this is how much money we're going to make from the parks for a while now. And it's like, we can't keep the same head count that we're keeping, or that we have in place now. And they turned to the resort and basically told them, these are the numbers of cuts you have to make. And Universal Orlando spokesman Tom Schroeder, a great guy, by the way, he got saddled with being the one who had to make this announcement. He said, "We have made the difficult decision to reduce our parks and resorts workforce across multiple locations and business units. This decision was not made lightly, but was necessary to prepare us for the future. We are working to structure and strengthen our business for the future in anticipation of the tourism industry taking time to fully recover." So, and you were just mentioning us prior to recording here that the ramification with live entertainment at the park, right? Blue Man Group?
Yeah, so Cirque du Soleil bought the Blue Man Group before COVID-19 hit. All of a sudden, COVID shuts down all of these large entertainment venues and large gatherings, so layoffs were imminent. So what happened was Cirque du Soleil cut a huge percentage of their workforce because having a touring show like a Cirque show takes a lot of time, effort, and manpower because you have Blue Man Group that have residencies in Orlando as well as in Vegas. It's a little bit of a different story, but they fall under the same company. So when the company's hurting, you're going to see this level of response where it's like, we can't have people on payroll, we can't have entertainers because they're not entertaining anyone right now. Do we know what's going to happen when the theaters reopen? I'm hoping that things will go back to a somewhat normal sense, but they're all part of the same industry of putting on a show in front of large gatherings of people.
I don't know. I mean, this kind of brings us back to, what Mr. Schroeder put out there. The question of when will Florida's tourism industry fully recover? I mean, back on the 16th of this year, Universal Orlando, literally a day ahead of, the official opening of the Dockside and the Suites, which, the second half of the Endless Summer Resort, that they announced that they were postponing the opening. And for me, where this got interesting is just this past Thursday, July 2nd, the Universal Orlando Resort announced that it would be offering its annual pass holders special hotel and ticket packages for this year's Halloween Horror Nights, which is supposed to run from September 10th through November 1st on 40 select nights. Now, this I personally found fascinating because, face it, for a lot of us who, when Disney back on June 24th announced that this year they were canceling, I mean, not reducing the number of dates, but outright canceling the 2020 edition of Mickey's Not So Scary, which was going to run 36 nights, or 36 select nights, from August 13th through October 31st. But here's Universal. It's like not only are they going forward with Halloween Horror Nights, but they're actually offering the special hotel ticket package to their annual pass holders. And what was interesting for me was that as I was looking over the list of the hotels, here's a package for the Dockside Inn and Suites, which is being offered for just $65 a person per night, based on a family of 4. So that means Dockside Inn and Suites will be open no later than September 10th of this year. And by the way, what is it? The special perks associated with this hotel ticket package, special commemorative pin honoring the 30th year of the event, dedicated entry gate. Now, mind you, that'll only be open until 8 o'clock at night. But if you're in this hotel, a ticket package, you can skip the line and go straight into the event. And if you want to stay at some of the higher end hotels on property, we've got the Lowe's Royal Pacific that starts at $95 a night. Hard Rock Hotel, it's $105 at night, and then Portofino, $105. But again, that's per person per night, based on a family of 4. So do the math, folks. But here's what kind of makes me crazy about this. We were talking earlier about everything that's going on in California, and here's Governor Newsom, trying his damnedest to flatten the curve yet again in California. But let's look at the state of Florida, where today, Saturday, July 4th, the state of Florida reported 11,458 new cases of COVID-19. And to put that in perspective, Dustin, that's the second highest number of daily cases that a state has reported since the beginning of the pandemic here in the United States. New York back in April had one day when they had more new cases. They had 11,571 new cases in one day in mid-April, and that's literally just 113 more than Florida experienced reported today. And and so here's Governor Newsom moving decisively, closing beaches, issuing a stay-at-home order, and here's Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who keeps saying things like the state is not going back. That and this is in the face of corona cases surging 46% in Florida over the past week, but he's not going to stop that state from reopening. And this just kind of kills me because just this week, we got an announcement out of Universal Studios Japan, and you've got to be seeing the same things I've seen. Those amazing videos from a distance.
They look so cool.
Land. Yeah. They look amazing. Wonderful kinetics, amazing detail. But the Universal Studios Japan, it feels like they have a responsibility to the larger community. Yeah. So they've been reopened. In fact, here's the fascinating Japanese take on how to reopen a theme park. They reopened on June 19th with limited capacity for their annual pass holders, and as well as the residents of Osaka, the city in the immediate vicinity of the theme park, and nobody else. Nobody else can get in, because they want to behave in a socially responsible manner. Whereas Governor DeSantis of Florida, look, I know there are tens of thousands of people who work in tourism and themed entertainment who are unemployed right now, and they have my sympathies. They really do. But of the 21 million people who live in Florida right now, 19.1% of them, some 4.2 million, are 65 and older. And COVID-19 is just laying waste to that population group. And this is what's making the folks at Disney and Universal very, very nervous. If the rate of infection, of coronavirus infection, continues to climb in Florida, first of all, who's going to want a vacation in that state? And more to the point, Dustin, talk about how you can't even leave Canada right now.
It's true. Border's been closed for a while now, and it looks like things aren't going to be moving all that quickly coming back. But let's be honest, even if the borders were open, would we still want to vacation in Florida with this type of a thing going on? If you open your state, people will come. That's fine. And Florida, just like Central California, they all have things that people want to go and see. But we're talking about a situation where, is it necessary? Is going to a theme park, or up here, like going to a bar or going to a theater, you can only control your own exposure to this virus. In a situation where you're being placed in a line very close to somebody else, you don't know how they're taking this virus seriously. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, Len was saying when he visited the Universal Park, in fact, he went in the past week or so to experience the new Bourne Stuntacular. He was saying, he was seeing 100% mask compliance. He was seeing it with the team members. He was seeing it with the guests in the park. So at least there's that. But face it, in theory, the only people who are at Universal right now are residents of Florida. In fact, that was the whole thinking about reopening these theme parks, was that, all of these people in Florida who have been sheltering in place, they should be among the first to get to go back to these parks, and then phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, we reopen to the public. And
well, I think we're at this point right now where people should go and watch one of my favorite episodes of the Magic School Bus, called Inside Ralphie, where they go and show you how Ralphie, who's a character of this beloved, amazing TV series, gets sick and how your body reacts to it.
And there's a reason we're talking about Magic School Bus, which we'll get to in a second.
Men need a store that has the right thing for their thing, like a Kenneth Cole suit made with Choflex fabric to keep them cool at their cousin-in-law's third wedding in the middle of July. Whatever the thing, Men's Warehouse has the clothes for it. Love the way you look, Men's Warehouse.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And we're back. Just before the break there, Dustin was talking about Magic School Bus, and there was a reason that he was talking about. Now, this was the animated series, right? The one that Lily Tomlin did the voice of, the Miss Frizzle?
Yeah, the show came out in 1994.
Right. I was kind of stunned to see that show was so, first of all, it was the longest running science program, I guess, in television history. It ran 18 consecutive seasons on PBS, was then translated into different languages so it could be shown in 100 different countries, and in turn there were some 80 million books related to the show published. But I get, and that's the thing. It's like, that's wonderful. But it's just like, just this past week, we saw the announcement that Universal Pictures is teaming with, I want to say, Elizabeth Banks to produce a Magic School Bus movie. And in fact, Elizabeth Banks is not only producing the film, she's going to play Mrs. Frizzle. Or Ms. Frizzle, excuse me. I get how, again, we learned how we went inside of Ralphie and saw him with a virus. I don't know how we're going to get a 2-hour-long theatrical film out of this, but hey, they could surprise me.
There's just so much that they've learned in science and in history and everything like that, that going into a live action version of this, it's that next step in bringing our childhood into that next, generation. And Magic School Bus hit Netflix. I think that was the real change of course for this, because a lot of people started to realize what this TV show was all about.
Now you're talking about what the Magic School Bus rides again, the one that Kate McKinnon is now. What is it? She's not even playing Miss Frizzle. She's playing her Miss Frizzle's sister Fiona. I again, something I got to get around to watching at some point. And something I guess I'll eventually get around to watching. Did you see this announcement about Universal rebooting Twister?
Oh, no, I didn't. No.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is the infamous. I mean, don't get me wrong. I actually enjoyed this in theaters.
Sure.
And the Bonnet, saying. But the behind-the-scenes stories are amazing. I guess, what is it? Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton, they absolutely hated each other, and it was a brutal, because so many of the effects had to be done practically. Lots of standing in front of wind machines, having things hurled at you, and rain, and just did not sound like a lot of fun.
Do you remember the story of how they had to have the actors, Bill and Helen, there because it was the Twister franchise, but they never wanted to be filmed in the same studio or anything, so they were always on two separate screens?
Yeah, they did. They literally had them on two different monitors on two different sides of the room. And more to the point, I remember talking with somebody, because the interesting thing, you got to remember, this was an expensive movie to make. So
yes,
Amblin actually went to both Universal and Warner Brothers to put up the money for this. And I want to say Universal released it domestically while Warner Brothers handled it overseas. And given that the movie made like $475 million back in 1996, this was a huge hit for everybody involved. Yep. So there was a sequel developed, and mind you, it had a very weird, dumb premise. And the idea basically was that instead of Twister, this was Twisters with an S. And they were supposed to set down rather than out in the countryside and send cows flying through the air, it was supposed to set down in a municipal environment. I want to say Oklahoma City or something to that effect. And the idea was that, well, what would it be like if you had the F5 roll into a mall or a zoo. Never mind cows flying around.
It's the follow-up for Jurassic Park. How they brought the dinosaurs into where is that, San Diego, and it's just like, I guess we're doing this now.
Yeah. So anyway, but again, Helen and Bill hated each other so much, and they needed their participation, so it never went anywhere. But this sequel, actually, it's being they're courting Joseph Kosinski. Who Disney fans will remember directed Tron Legacy. And I guess one of the reasons they're pursuing him for this job is Top Gun.
Maverick.
Long in the works sequel. Maverick, Top Gun Maverick. Evidently turned out really, really well. So that they're after him on the heat of that film. Can you come do this reboot? And what's interesting is Frank Marshall, who helped produce the original film for Amblin, is back on board, and coincidentally, for something we'll be talking about shortly, he's also the producer of the Bourne Stuntacular. Let's see, what else? Colin Trevorrow, we were just talking about him, or at least the film that he's working on right now, Jurassic World Dominion. He's lined up his follow-up project once production of this finally wraps, and it's a thriller based on the mythical city of Atlantis that Universal not only wants to produce, but it also wants to distribute. Kind of a different take on this, Dustin. It's not the city that sank beneath the sea's surface, never to be seen again. It's literally going to be about a lost continent that somehow has been sitting out in the middle of the Indian Ocean between Africa, India, and Oceania, and nobody's noticed it up until this point, which brings a lot of interesting questions about, are they getting their technology from Wakanda? How exactly do you hide a continent?
I'm worried because, Google. I always thought I trusted Google Maps. I guess not.
Yeah, well, maybe Atlantis is slipping them a few bucks. But anyway, production designer of this film, Kevin Jenkins, also worked with Colin on Star Wars Episode 9. It's also working with him right now on Jurassic World Dominion, so at least we know it's going to look good. I just wonder about the story. Anyway, okay, so we were just talking about the Bourne Stuntacular, which finally, after couple of weeks of tech rehearsals and soft openings. Finally opened earlier this week on June 30th. And you were mentioning, Dustin, you've been sort of eyeballing this project on YouTube and thereabouts. What do you think of what you've seen?
The stunts are great. The technology behind it. It's exactly what that movie franchise needs. It needs a stunt show. It needs a place where you can see true fun and excitement and story. The only thing that I'll say, and I'm not the first one to say it, but the movie franchise is incredibly valuable to the Universal brand because it's theirs. The old Terminator experience that was there, it wasn't there. So when you look at something like Bourne, it'll take a little bit of time to really get back to the audience. But honestly, if the attraction is good, it doesn't matter about the movies. People will go to see the talent of the actors, the skill and the technology there. And from what I've seen from YouTube, and I know YouTube is not the place to go, but borders are closed. So I have to get what I can, but I was hoping to be down there when this opened, at least within the first couple of weeks, but it looks like a distinct improvement over Terminator, and it works within that segment of the theme park.
Well, no, it's interesting you bring up the IP thing, because you can actually track this show decision from when NBC Universal bought DreamWorks Animation back in April of 2016. They paid $3.8 billion, and the word came down from Comcast. It's like, okay, we've just paid all of this money because we've put out this much money to acquire DreamWorks. We don't want to be paying licensing fees, going forward for theme park attractions. We would like going forward our stuff that's in the Universal parks based on Universal-owned IPs. And so, we saw the Florida version of Terminator open back in October of 2016, and that's where, the Bourne thing got developed. And, I'm old, so I remember back when the Bourne, there were just Bourne books. In fact, I want to say my old pal Reto Lichtensteiger was the one who introduced me to the Bourne identity back in 1980, which was a doorstop of a book, but enjoyable. So there was a second in the series, The Bourne Supremacy, which came out in 86, and the third and final of the original trilogy, The Bourne Ultimatum, came out in 1990. Now, Robert Ludlum dies in March of 2001. He's 73. And the Ludlum estate decides at this point that they want to continue the Bourne series, following Robert's death. So they hire Eric Van Lustbader. There we go. And the first of the Van Lustbader Bourne books come out in 2004. And he goes on to write 12 of them. And I guess, he was in the middle of writing the Bourne Nemesis back in 2019, and it's just like, I don't want to do this anymore, and just walked away. It's kind of interesting that evidently that manuscript is half finished, will never be published, but the Ludlum estate then hires Brian Friedman to continue the book series, and his first book came out earlier this year, The Bourne Evolution. Anyway, to get back to the original Bourne trilogy, the first book, Bourne Identity, has been adapted twice. First time it was a TV movie starring, yet again, you can tell this was a TV movie from 1988 because it stars Richard Chamberlain and Jacqueline Smith. So it's like you can't get much more 1980s than that. And then we got the live action film starring Matt Damon, the first of which came out in 2002, which again, remember, Frank Marshall, helped produce and was so successful. We got a sequel, The Bourne Supremacy, in 2004, followed by The Bourne Ultimatum in 2007. Matt opts out of appearing in the fourth film, The Bourne Legacy, which hit theaters in 2012. They bring in Jeremy Renner for that installment. He doesn't play Jason Bourne, but an entirely new character, Aaron Cross, some sort of a Department of Defense operative. Matt returns for a fifth installment of the series, Jason Bourne, in 2016, and then just last year we got Treadstone, right, from the world of Jason Bourne. It was a television series on USA Network, debuted in September of 2019, and sadly didn't catch on, so canceled after just one season and 10 episodes. But anyway, we were talking about Terminator 2 3D Battle Across Time, and as I mentioned, that shut down in October of 2017. And, face it, the thinking was that, here we have this place that's been a stunt show forever. Mm-hmm. And that we should put a stunt show back in where, a stunt show was. Likewise, if you remember Terminator 2 3D, it featured live performers interacting with physical props that then moved in front of projected footage. I mean, how many of you remember the moment when, the Terminator comes through the screen on that giant motorcycle and, "Come with me if you want to live."
Yeah.
It was back in the day when this debuted in 96, it was very impressive. And right up to the end, it had some cool effects. But, anyone who's been following the Disney Gallery, the Mandalorian series over at Disney Plus, you've seen a lot of stories about the volume, the place that they shoot. They do so many amazing things that you'd swear are on location, and they're on a soundstage. They make use of this amazing wraparound screen. And what's interesting is Universal Creative has taken that very same technology and writ it big. I mean, you're talking about it's 22 feet tall, I want to say, and it's made up of 500 individual screens that stretch over 100 feet. And what's amazing is that this production, which is according to the folks at Universal Creative, based on characters and circumstances from the Jason Bourne film franchises, features action on stage. Have you seen, for example, the fight scene in front of the crowd?
Yeah, and it looks pretty seamless. And there is another scene that as the screen is moving, you can see a piece of set if you're in the right frame, and it's just like, if you're not sitting in that one seat, I don't think you would see it. It's that enhanced. And honestly, when you're looking at the fact that the background becomes just another thing that the stunt actors can play on, I think that was a huge win.
Oh, no, absolutely. And there's so much cutting edge tech. Like, for example, there are 8 moving set pieces in this show. These are 8 set pieces that move by themselves. That at their computerized cue on the show, they come on stage, and when they are done, they go. Not only do they go backstage, but they go back to their charging station, and so they're ready for the very next performance that they're charging up.
I wish my iPhone would do that.
I wish my toaster would do that. Anyway, okay. So, and what's interesting, for example, one of the set pieces that shows up a lot in footage that's out there, for the Bourne Stuntacular, is this fight on a tower that also gets taken out by an explosion. And Len was talking about how he was in the audience, watching this particular moment in the show. And what they do, it's something he'd never experienced in a Disney theme park show before, is that there's a moment during the fight on stage where the tower moves, because the fight is moving to the other side of the tower. But not only does the tower move, but the footage behind the screen moves in sync, as if you're watching this fight from a helicopter. And Len was talking about that moment that he literally had to grip his seat because his brain was telling him, because the tower was moving and the screen was moving, he was moving. And it's just sort of like that you have that sort of illusion, that they give that sort of feeling to the audience. It's sort of going to be interesting to see. In addition to the please keep social distancing, and by the way, if you get motion sickness, here's a bag. But don't touch that either. Anyway, an interesting thing to obviously, I guess there had been conversations early on about could they get Matt to come back, and the answer turned out to be no. But they did get Julia Stiles, who's been in a couple of the Bourne films, to come shoot footage for the pre-show. And it's been kind of interesting. I don't know if you've seen any of the actual performances or thereabouts, but all of the team members who work the show and a lot of the performers who appear on stage are also wearing masks. So everything, everyone's doing their COVID-19 related part right now. And I think between, it's hard to select from having watched a bunch of different versions, which, by the way, weren't supposed to be shot. So, there were constant things from Universal. Please don't take photos. Please don't take videos. And again, theme park bloggers, you got to love them. It's like, I'm sorry, I saw your lips moving. I don't understand what you say. But they have this amazing footage of the cars coming up out of the basement, rotating in a high-speed chase that they sell strictly on the back of, how these cars move, interacting with the footage. It's just amazing, cutting-edge stuff, and in a totally appropriate way, a wonderful follow-up to, in much the same way the Terminator 2 3D Battle Across Time was cutting-edge in '96, the Bourne Stuntacular is, just as cutting-edge, if not more so, for 2020. So again, Dustin, when they finally open up the borders and allow you to head south, I'm gonna love to hear from you. What this show is like in person.
Absolutely. What better way to start a day at Universal Studios than rope dropping the Bourne Stuntacular with a voodoo donut in hand?
I will say this though, I think in the Jason Bourne world, rope drop means an entirely different thing. So, maybe just saying. Okay. Anyway, but that's a while off. So in between, what are you doing with your various podcasts? What's going on there?
Yep. So I'm over at stepsandmagic.com, Disney and Universal trip planning, top 10 lists, fun facts, all that other stuff. The We Like Theme Parks podcast is still going strong, so lots of content. They're doing 2 shows a week. But to be honest, I've been listening to a lot of your shows, and gotta admit, my favorite show that's come out over the last little bit was when you guys got to talk with Josh Gad. That was an amazing show.
Nobody was more amazed or surprised than I. I mean, I interviewed Josh. I mean, since we've been conversational since back in 2013, but I had no idea he was coming on the show. And more to the point, I don't think Josh knew. He thought he was dropping in to say hello. And, like a half hour later, is walking at the door, and we've beaten him senseless and asked all of these questions. And it's a very sweet guy. Really appreciate him coming on the show. But yeah, that was all Drew's doing. I was, shocked and surprised myself. But at the same time, I feel like Len's doing some amazing work on site with Laurel. He and for the Bandcamp exclusive shows for Disney Dish, they have been visiting all of the DVCs and taking a look at what Disney's like after it's been closed for 3 months. On the other hand, Aaron Adams and I are going to be recording our first Marvelous Disney podcast in a while, and poor Adam, I guess Johnny Storm visited an apartment, a couple over from his.
Oh yeah, I heard that there was a fire at his complex.
So. Thank goodness, but again, what I love about the way Aaron tells his story, and of course, it was apartment unit 2020 that caught on fire, which is entirely in theme for the way this year has gone. And looking at Lucasfilm, Dan Z and I are, going to get back on the horse later this week, get a new show out the door. In fact, and then the very next thing I'm going to be doing is tomorrow I'm recording a new Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, and then Michelle Valladolid and I are going to start talking about, do a new I Want That, because the interesting thing is that, in fact, I don't think we mentioned this as part of earlier the show. Downtown Disney in Anaheim, well, the theme park, we don't know when the 2 Disney theme parks are going to open up. The dining and retail opens on July 9th. But, on the heels of, Newsom shutting down bars and outside dining, I don't know what that's going to be like. But again, so long story short, we've got some shows coming up over there. And I tell you what, folks, if you could do Dustin and I a favor, if you could head over to iTunes and not only say nice things about Universal Joint, but likewise, we like theme parks. That would be helpful. Also, if you really, really, really like what you're listening to here today, if you could head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be helpful. And likewise, you get these amazing shows that Len and Laurel are doing on site. In fact, I think today they're doing a walk around of Wilderness Lodge. And okay, Dustin, social media. If folks are looking to follow you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm just over at Instagram, Steps to Magic, and Dustin Fuhs.
Oh, cool. All right. Let's see. Twitter and Instagram, we're in that space as Jim Hill Media. If you go over to Facebook, we are Jim Hill Media News. And I guess that will do it for now, folks. And again, I apologize for it being 6 weeks between shows. That will not happen again. Dustin and I will be back with a brand new show in 2 weeks' time, or he will come over the border. And remember, New Hampshire and Canada are relatively close.
Exactly.
Break my legs. So, we'll be back with a new show. I promise. And until then, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.